We're alive. We should be
Look how
alive.
fast.
Yes. I mean, after doing this for a couple,
A couple years
a
now.
couple years
Has
now.
it really been, that amazes me because it all started, I guess we were introduced at the end of 2019. Is
In
that correct?
19. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, by Jenny Midgley.
Yep.
Shout out to Jenny Midgley
Mhm.
on that one. She's a good soul connector.
Yeah, she is. She
Yeah.
is.
So we had that first conversation, it was around the holidays.
Hmm.
And then we had such a good time. We decided let's do more conversations. So I guess it wasn't until February that we decided to go live. Is that right?
To come in this place and play.
Yeah, that we decided we were gonna like have our conversations in eavesdrop mode.
Yes. Yes. Ooh, amazing how, I think there's a testament to doing something, just doing it
Yeah.
and coming in and not giving excuses, starting without knowing, right? You kind of know the framework, but you're just starting, and then it morphs into this, and who knows where it's gonna go? Red chairs, right?
That's it. That's it. Well, I mean, I think I love that you said that because we really are in a time where a lot of people are leaping off cliffs, not literally, hopefully not. Um, but I mean, taking those risks in their lives that, they might have been sitting on the fence for a little while on, considering like, should I do this? Do I have enough capital? Do I have enough time? Do I, like, are all my ducks in a row? And,
Yeah.
and if this quarantine or again, we need to stop. I need to stop. We don't need to do anything. I need to stop calling it quarantine because it's been a great reset. I think
Mhm.
it isn't
Yeah.
just about one thing, right? It isn't
Yeah.
about quarantine or COVID or the changing of the guard or that, whatever we want to call it period wise, it has really been a wonderful, my client said this morning, reset.
Mhm.
It's this ability to step back. But one of the things, has been, it's like, well, life is too short. I mean, unfortunately, through some losses that some people have had, they're like, well, you know, I got to do this now. I've
Mhm.
got life now. So, and I want to do this now. So I'm going to do this now. So that whole thing to just, Nike, I always believe that Nike slogan, just do it.
Uh-huh.
I remember the first time seeing, I don't know if I heard it or saw it first, but I just thought, oh,
They got it.
they got it.
They
They
nailed
got it.
it.
They nailed that one. So yeah.
We got some eavesdroppers on. We
Yeah.
had Bill was on. Bill
Ah,
told me last week, man, I don't think I'm gonna make it because I'm taking my daughter to Queens College, I think, for a college visit. But hey, you made it, Bill.
good to
Bill,
have you.
I have to come out to hand deliver this to you from last week. Who knows? I may feel, you know, kind of generous to give another one, but who knows?
Like you just, how many books you
However,
got? I thought you
oh,
only ordered
oh, oh,
two.
do you want to know how many I got? I did receive another one in the mail from a good friend. So we can play cards now.
Oh,
Which one do you have? When you play, bam, I hit you with the looking in, and I hit you with another one. But no, thank you. I received my book, Traci, and can I share?
absolutely.
Okay, Wulwyn, your support, friendship, and belief in me means the world. I hope you find real value in what you read. And I didn't read these because I didn't want to put an increase in them, for
I
to
know
as
how
the
that goes. I
gifts.
was like that
Yeah,
signing them. I was like, I don't want to crease them while I'm
correct.
signing.
So I'm gonna hit you up, Bill, with yours, but I'm going
Aw.
to sit and read. This looks like an easy read. I love the size. I love how
Thank
you
you.
can flip it. My teacher told me when you're reading books like this, you do like this to hold
That's
them,
that's right.
so you just go, and so I'm looking forward, but moreover, what comes with this. Does this only come with the one personalized from you?
Oh yeah,
So
that's
check this out, y'all. Check this out. So it's I'm gonna read it and you'll guess what it is. When I saw it first, I said, she sent me a mouse, something to put my
mouse
mouse
pad.
on. Like, okay, this looks kind of cool. But then I open it, I go, it is the jar opener, when something stuck and you come in and assist you to get more grip on it and you open it, right? When you're stuck and need to open to your greatest potential, leading your life powerfully tastes so much better. Traci Phillips, leadership and performance coach, the innate coach. This is such a beautiful, thoughtful marketing thingy. Really appreciate it. When I got it, I was like, I'm not going to tell her I got it. I'm going to surprise her on the show. So thank you so much for it. And to those of you who would want, one of those, if I don't gift it to you, go over to Amazon and look in it. You'll see it. You'll go pick it up.
I would love for them to do that. The one thing I love because I told you this, when you order on Amazon, that means you can also leave some thoughts about it, right? So only people who order on Amazon can leave a testimonial or a recommendation on the book. And so that does give that opportunity, which, is really helpful because I was talking to my dad this weekend. So thank you for sharing those things. Hey. That jar opener, I have to tell this side story on that because I was talking, so a shout out to Randy Bernstein, who is a friend and colleague. He actually is in the promotional product, arena, and really does it so well. He's done my business cards and he did those jar openers. And so I went to Randy and I said, okay, Randy, I'm kind of, I'm an executive coach. Everybody does pens. Everybody does mugs. No slight on anybody who's doing pens and mugs. I don't want you to feel offended, but I wanted something unique. That's me too. I wanted something unique. And I said, there's this thing I got at that point. I was thinking it was 2 years ago. It was a jar opener from somebody else. It was like a bank or something like that. I use that thing so much. Like I was like, this is the most usable tool in my household. I think when And he goes, well, we can find some good ones. I said, I'd want it in my colors and all that. And then I thought, well, people are going to be like, okay, cool. But what does that have to do with what you do? Right.
Correct.
So that's where I came up with that whole, if you feel stuck in life and you want to open yourself up. And because again, I want to give what I found benefit in, like what's been valuable to me, again, as a gift to hopefully it's valuable to other people, but then also make that connection. So, but
correct.
What I was saying is I talked to my dad this weekend and he actually read the book. He got his copy and sat down and read it. And my father, over the years has been one of my greatest connectors to great literature. I remember starting very young, he would recommend books. Or he would give me books for, my birthday or special holidays or whatever. And even in college, he would get all excited and call me and go, Traci, I just read this book. I think you'd love it. And so, books have always been kind of a love language between my dad and I, ways that he was raised kind of more of the not stoic in the sense of like closed, tight-lipped, but just, didn't always express his emotions. And yet I could get a lot from his thoughts and feelings through the books he recommended. And so again, it was like a love language. And my dad is a very, he's an intellectual, he has a lot of intellectual curiosity. He's interested in a lot of things. And he's always read, and learned from the world and shared and passed that on. And so it was very touching to me when he, he came back and said, yeah, T, and he calls me T, I read your book. And he said, it's very good. It's very well written. And I think any child, seeks that validation from a parent.
Yes.
But knowing the level at which my father values language and values good authorship, it really hit home. It really hit home how valuable, this is. And he went on to say, I think the timeliness is really spot on. I think that this is something that people really need, whether they're in leadership or not. And he went on to pass it on, and some of his friends, I'm going to read it. I'm going to get it. And so, word of mouth is the best thing. Grassroots is where everything usually starts. at
Mm.
some level. So, anyway, I'm sharing all that because it really meant a lot to me. So Dad, if you're listening, and thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
yeah.
your words. They meant a lot.
So would you say, so before I go, I have a question for you.
Mhm.
Um, but I need to bring in a couple people. Bill goes, I'm going to hang in here. Bill Irwin, hang on as long as I can. Come on, hang on, Bill. You can do it. You
You
can
could do.
do it. You know, as if you're trying to go to another meeting, good. But if you're driving, you can put us on your mobile device, put it on your Bluetooth. Don't look at us, but you can just listen, listen and drive, right? So we have Roy. Roy goes, hey, I love jar openers. It's a usable tool. And then Bill Irwin goes, get a grip.
That's actually, I think Randy said that. He goes, well, you could say something like, get a grip. It's
and,
great.
and Roy goes, hey, how innovative to include the message. But we didn't. Okay, Bill, it's another meeting. I see it. You can put us on hashtag replay. But I
Thanks,
was
Bill.
I know I was going to ask your love for language. Would you think that your dad played a huge part in it for you
He did. My
flowing or
grandmother,
your
my,
grandma?
my grandmother, his mother actually played
Paternal,
a
okay.
yeah,
Wow.
paternal grandmother. Yeah,
Mhm.
actually played a very big role. Language was very important to her. Genealogy was important to her, so the derivative, the
Gotcha.
derivation of things
Ah.
was important to her. And she definitely instilled that in me, is where do things come from?
Mm.
The meaning of things and where they originated, and knowing that you carry the honor of that. Like when we tend to just, you and I've talked about this,
Mhm.
throw things around and not think about, not only what we're saying, but even how we're acting. We're not as intentional as we could be. And there was a lot of intentionality that went into, I think what I learned from that side of the family
Mm.
specifically.
Yeah.
From my mother's side, there was a lot of love and a lot of creativity and a lot of open, generous, giving and being. And from my father's side, there was this, more, I want to say serious, but in some cases it did come across as that, but more thoughtful. I guess
Mhm.
that's the best way of putting it. More
Mhm.
thoughtful. That's where I think my reverence side comes from. I
Correct.
mean, I think it's innate, but I think it was also supported and helped along by the fact that, there was a lot of thoughtfulness that was kind of expected,
Correct.
from that side of the family. And so I'm really grateful, and it is really, I do think it's important for us to think, I was talking to a client yesterday, and she was sharing with me, kind of this aha that she had come to around, spending so much of her life being, so concerned and quiet,
Mhm.
because she was so concerned of other people's needs, so everything was for other people, which, that's a story that a lot of people play. But I said, well, let's flip the script on that narrative and let's look at what you gained from being an observer. Do you think
Mm.
there's value in how good you've gotten at observing and what you observe because you're so observant,
Mhm.
right? That
Mhm.
you see that other people don't.
Yes.
And where could your valuable voice be a message for what you're observing that could be beneficial for people who are not taking the time to be
Whew.
as intentional, thoughtful, and observant?
Yeah.
And she was like, because it just changed it changed the trajectory of where that storyline was going. Because a lot of it was like, oh, why did it take me this many years to figure this? And it's like, yes, but
Mm.
what were you gaining during that time that you were being quiet and not speaking up? You were
Mm.
sharpening your saw or sharpening your axe, on this observancy, right, piece that is really valuable. So, I think it is important to go back and look at the value of what we've gained in the various areas within our lives.
True. As you were speaking about, your grandma, paternal, and a couple of things I want to bring to light. You saying reverence came from dad. you know, derivatives, etc., came from dad's side. Doesn't mean that reverence wasn't in mom's side. It's just that that
No.
thing was
Mm-mm.
more, it was more in the spotlight.
Pronounced.
Yeah, more
Mhm.
pronounced in there. So on my end, I think my love for storytelling and just speaking and giving and being observant comes from my paternal grandfather. So to all of
Mm.
you listening, some of you who would listen in replay, it is so important to to have grandparents around because the you are so involved in the things that are under your noses, you know, eat, do homework, etc. Grandmom, grandparents, granddad, they are there to just give the love and support and build the innate things that are within your kids so that
Mm.
to allow them to explore. So my grandfather, for one, I'll tell you a quick story again. Told you stories. uh, we were watching a black and white TV in Liberia. We had Bonanza. I don't know if you
Oh
remember the
yeah.
show Bonanza, right? So Bonanza
Mhm.
comes on and it's 8:30, and Bonanza is a 30-minute thing. And granddad, was it 30 or 1 hour? Um,
I don't
anyway, I
remember.
know. Anyway, granddad will go to bed as soon as it starts. He would wake up in the morning, whoa, and come and tell me. And I'm like, yeah, Bonanza got the bad guys, and the bad guys, he, you know, put gunpoint. And he said, for 30 minutes, that's what happened? I'm like, yeah. He's like, come back again. So the next time I will watch it, I will come back and say, Bonanza got on his horse. When he got on his horse, he galloped to a place where he cut the bad guys. He's like, that happened in 30 minutes? Then I said, what do you want me to tell you? He said, gotta narrate the story. And then I started to watch for two. And that's what I do that's what I've been doing
Interesting.
my entire life, just watching for two. And I'm recording, and I can tell the story. And it turned out to be Bonanza. Granddad, what time did you go to bed? He said, well, I went to bed when he got on his horse. I said, okay, there. I said, when he got on his horse, he started to gallop.
Sound effects
And,
and all.
and when he went, he looked left. When he looked left, he saw the guys and he hunched over the horse and he started to go faster and faster. And then my granddad, all of a sudden, he's immersed in it and he's going. And I could see him going, and that's connecting with the crowd.
Yeah.
When you go and speak, you have to
Yeah.
speak their language so they are connecting with you. And
Mm.
I just did I emceed my niece's wedding this weekend in
Aw.
St. Augustine's, Florida. You know, shout out to
Oh.
Cameron and Brittany. And it was my best emceeing. You know, my son looked at me and said, "Man, you did well, Dad," because
Wow.
it was involving the crowd. It was having talking directly to someone and them replying, and then talking to another person way on the other side of the hall, and bringing them in to the conversation.
Mhm.
Thank God for grandparents. You know, so
Yeah.
as you are, excuse me, as you are living, as you have the privilege of having your parents around, come on, bring your parents around, spend some time with them, with your so your kids can spend time with them, valuable time. And my time with my grandfather, oh my goodness, he was the love of my life.
Oh.
The everything that I know, everything that, I mean, giving props to my parents, but who he was, and I saw it. I didn't understand it, but the fact that he and I slept on the same bed because he was about 4'6", maybe, or 4'8", but that power in him, he could stand up to presidents, he could stand up to world leaders and say what have his say. And if he didn't have when he had his say, they put him in prison so many times, and he didn't care, right? And he wrote a lot. So all of those things, I
Mm.
feel them, I know they're in me from just touching and rubbing him, you know, during
Yeah.
those times. But you know, shout out to
Oh.
grandparents.
Yeah, I'm so glad you shared that. And I think I'm kind of seeing how this conversation is shaping itself, as they always do. They shape themselves. We don't shape
Mhm.
these conversations.
Mm-mm,
We
mm-mm.
go with the flow of the river of the conversation.
Yeah.
It is, I really believe it is a look back, and a gratitude at that, right? In where we've come from, and
Mhm.
whether you have grandparents in your life or whether that piece, right, of what would be a grandparent is a friend, or
Right.
even a really impactful situation that you've gone through in life
Yeah.
that was there to kind of, I mean, grandparents can also be a challenge.
Mhm. Mhm.
As much as my grandmother was there to really instill in me, this reverence for words and derivations and everything. She was a big challenge in my life as
Oh,
well.
oh,
And so, looking
yes.
like she was both, very, very positively influential and not so positively influential.
Agree.
But I think at the same time, I have deep gratitude for that, because we don't build resilience during times of comfort. We build resiliency during times of challenge, and where we can look at that challenge as an advocate for our resilience, right? So
Mhm.
one of the things that I'm always, looking at is, okay, this is really challenging, really painful, really difficult, whatever you want to call it. It is an advocate for my resiliency.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So no matter how I'm feeling and my discomfort at the moment around this challenge, giving it that story of building my resiliency helps me
Mm.
put it into perspective, right? It helps me find the role that it's playing, as opposed to, there was no reason for this. I suffered for nothing. There is nothing worse than feeling like you're suffering for nothing.
Yeah.
If you are giving yourself the story that you're suffering for nothing, then whoa, yeah, you are in a sorry place. Like, you are going to be in a very difficult place, because we don't want to ever feel like anything's for nothing. It's just human nature not to feel like anything's a waste.
Mhm.
Right. Even as small children, like my daughter was saying something about something, and my husband says, well, just, give it to the chickens. And she's like, oh no, that's a waste. I'll put it away and eat it later, or
There
whatever,
you go.
and
There you
and
go.
we don't inherently like to waste things. Right. So why waste our story on something that is wasting it,
Mm,
that is
mm,
saying it's for nothing.
mm.
I'm going through this for no, we don't go through anything for nothing.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
always a reason. We just get to find it.
Correct. Correct. You we are looking back, huh? So
We
my
are looking back.
so
Yeah.
Barbara Milcan, you must be a first timer. How are you?
Barbara. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Welcome. Holy
Welcome,
cow. Long
welcome,
time.
welcome. Roy, ghost challenges are good for many reasons. And, Roy, just what you said, it's me looking back now. I put a post on LinkedIn and Facebook. An associate professor in the chemistry department sent me a LinkedIn message about a professor emeritus who passed away.
Mhm.
And, I saw the name Raymond FX Williams, and I was like, I know that, I know that. And me and a person who sent it, we're not friends on Facebook.
Interesting.
Very interesting. But he reaches out to me and says, he sends me an obituary. And I go, what is this obituary? And I clicked and I go, Dr. Williams. I still remember, came to the US September 1st, 1995. And September 3rd, school began. Now imagine
Wow.
that cultural shock, etc. Right? So
Oh, gosh.
the challenge and change. And I entered this man's lecture hall, and he's lecturing chemistry, gave me physics, gave me calculus. I'm good, but chemistry just wasn't it for me. And I'm looking at him, first grade, I think it was a D, next one C, next one F. Uh, my midterms, it's going fast. Midterms, it's almost done. I go, wow, what can I do? So in Africa, if you go to the teacher to ask him, you're telling him he wasted his time in class, because
Ah,
to him he taught it well. So if
right.
you will come and it's like questioning his prowess in his his expertise. So you don't go to him to ask him. You go to your fellow students and say, what did you get? What did you get? So you do study time together. So I go, oh, am I going to ask this man? What is he going to think? I don't care. I'm going. So I go to him. I said, Dr. Williams, can I? Sure, come. I said, man, can I? My classes, my grade is terrible in your class. He looks at it. He says, sure is, Mr. Port. I go, yeah. So what can I do? He said, well, a good option is to kind of drop it or get an I, incomplete, because you don't want to mess your grades up. And I'm like, I said, what are the other options? He said, well, and he looks up. So I didn't put this in the post. He looks up and down at me, sizing me up, right? And said, the next thing I'm about to tell you, let me see if you can do it. And he looks and goes, well, you could come to my lab. So he had these computers with all his old tests on there, tests from 1960s, from 60s, 70s, 80s, 95, because he's been at the school for so long. He said, if you come and look at my tests and pass them, you just might pass with a C. It's up to you, but you can drop it, Mr. Port. And he tells me like that. And I look at him and I go, okay, thank you. I got in that lab and I just stayed in that lab. I stayed in that lab from anytime I wasn't in class, I was there till he closed it. Even sometimes he would say, you know what? Lock this from behind and then you'll be okay in the front. Okay, man. Last day of school, you read the story. Last day, classes, took the exam, could understand everything now. Mr. Port, could I see you in my office after class? I'm like, okay. I'm trembling. I'm scared. I'm like, oh my goodness, what is this? He comes in there, he sits down, he puts his glasses on, he looks at me, he says, well, you never let anybody tell you can't do something because you did it, Mr. Port. You got to be in my class. He says, I surely thought when you came here that day, you were going to get your withdrawal from my class, but you stood and you came and you persevered. Now that challenge and many others were defining moments in my life where the D or F was after midterms. I could have said, bump this. I'm going to go and take it again next. But I said, no, I'm not going to waste my time in here. I'm going to spend the time doing the work and taking the challenge.
Yeah.
In this time where challenges are many, when you can, really roll up your sleeves and have a plan that this is what I'm going to do. And when you execute the plan, I tell you, if I had failed, if I had made a final grade of a D or an F, I wouldn't have cared. I would have succeeded anyway because I had a plan and I executed on the plan. So when you have this goal that you want to do this or that, and you create the plan thereafter and you execute on the plan, and the outcome, whatever the outcome is, you've won. Yeah. You have won at that particular game, and you can take the experience of I'm low, I'm down. After a couple weeks, a couple months, I was up because I put in the time. You can go ahead and do it. Weight loss, teaching yourself a new language, trying to get in an industry you don't know about. Go and study and come back strong.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that message because it's about the experience and the challenge, and in this case, overcoming the challenge, not the destination point. And for so long, because whether the destination is success or failure, it's temporary. Yes. How many times it's like you're only as good as your last success, right? It's like you just on to the next one, right? So even if you were incredibly successful, that A starts all over the next term, right? You start from scratch and you get to build yourself back up. So whether it's a success or failure, it's still temporary. So it's not about the destination. It's about the experience and what the experience warrants and honors and gives you the opportunity for. And I think it is such a wonderful example of that, and when I was listening to you, there was part of me that was thinking about a lot of kids these days. And when I say kids, I mean everything from the 5-year-olds on up to the 30-year-olds. because I get to say that now because, at the age I'm at, I get to call the 30-year-olds kids. It's nice. But how many kids these days would do the same thing?
Hmm.
There's been a lot of the kicking the can down the road. We'll just keep kicking the can down the road. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think one, we've been conditioned to comfort and security and not resiliency, right? I know our parents and our grandparents were there teaching the message of resiliency. The parenting that has been given to the 5s to the 30-year-olds has been more about how can I help you do it so you can be successful. So, they may have quote unquote paper success, but have they actually, to your point, whether it's a success or failure as a destination, have they been successful in the try?
Yeah.
Have they been successful in the resiliency category, right? In building those parts and skills within us that allow us to find the solutions and test ourselves. At the end of the day, you knew what you were capable of, but you didn't necessarily know before because you hadn't experienced that yet.
Yes.
Right? We don't know what we're capable of until we put it to the test. And so if we're constantly kicking that can down the road, I'll do it next week or next year or next term or whatever we're telling ourselves, we never get to it. We never get to testing our capacity. And when we don't test our capacity, guess what? That shows up in our confidence. The reason we're not confident is because confidence is only about experience. When people say, oh, I want to build up confidence, and I'm like, then build up experience. And experience isn't always credentials. In fact, most of the time, experience comes from living, right? Not necessarily getting the credential that says that you're the expert in that area. It's from being in various, circumstances and situations within that area where you gain that expertise.
Yes.
Right. And so, anybody can jump on LinkedIn and go through a LinkedIn class and now all of a sudden get this certification as a LinkedIn, whatever, fill in the blank. And again, I'm not trying to discredit the value of it. Okay. I'm just saying, if you're spending all your time doing that and no time out there in the field, gaining your personal expertise, finding out what your personal capability is in that area, then you really don't know what you're capable of.
Yes.
You may have a lot of credentials or letters after your name, but you don't really know what you're capable of. Both are important. But at the same time, not equally so. Right. And so my message is really to say that, get out there, try. It kind of goes back to the just do it. Right. We started in that place. And, if there's something that's calling you, I love how your professor invited you into the options.
Yes.
He started with the easy and then he presented the more challenging.
Correct.
And he was neutral in both. He was not like, well, I think, there was no way to tell which way he would have chosen for you had it been his decision.
Yes.
And that's brilliant. That's great. That's a great teacher there.
He was, I'm telling you, I am telling you, Walter goes, if only it were that way here. So Walter teaches at Fuquay Verena High School, the newly minted Fuquay. And he says, I'm in the middle of the youth. I'm telling you, since COVID, the push and perseverance isn't there.
No.
And let's
they're also dealing with a lot. And what I was going to say is that all the parenting, we can look at the parenting, we can look at a lot of things. We can also look at the fact that these kids are dealing with a lot of stuff we didn't have to. They are getting a bombardment of information we weren't privy to, right? So just with social media alone, just with the internet that we never had growing up. They know what's going on in the world. We were it's like ignorance is bliss. Like we didn't know that there were bombs going off in other parts of the world. We didn't know. If you were there, but, if it was just our pocket of the world, was it a safer place to live? I don't know, but it was seemingly so, right? Nowadays, you don't just let your kids go, out in the morning and you just expect them back at dusk. It's like you text me when you get there, you text me, so I know every step of the way where you are. And so their kids not only don't feel like they have as much freedom to kind of find themselves just, haphazardly through life, they have a lot more knowledge about the dangers and the difficulties and the challenges, and yet they're still kids. So developmentally, they've taken on a whole lot before their time. And
Correct.
over time, and that it's like sticking a 100-pound backpack on a 5-year-old, right? As soon as we allow them to tap in to what's going on in the world, it's not like we're trying to coddle them, but there is a certain developmental stage that they get to just be kids. Like my daughter said, she's like, Mom, I'm so tired of worrying about this and worrying about that. I want to just go and be a kid.
Wow.
And that says a lot. And so there are a lot of reasons. I'm certainly not, I think, like I said, there's always a reason for everything. It's not about judging and pointing fingers and saying, oh, these kids are just not as resilient as we are.
True.
There's a lot of reasons for that, and it doesn't mean that the reasons should be the excuses either. But we do get to factor those in when we're approaching it. And when we're approaching it first and foremost with our attitudes, right? Because I see a lot of the older generation, doing these younger kids, instead of really trying to dig in and understand the reason why these kids are the way they are. And how can we, like your grandfather, like your professor, how can we help them along based on what their unique experiences have been? They haven't been ours. They haven't been through what we've been through, and we haven't been through what they've been through.
True.
Right?
I think that also the flip to that is that there are, I'm pretty sure, I know you're not saying all are, all is like that, right?
No, I'm talking from a
There's
cultural standpoint, like
correct.
social standpoint.
There are, I don't have any empirical data. I don't. However, certain cultures, I believe if there was a teacher on here, if I could ask Walter, this was a time where I would love to bring in Walter here now and say, hey, Walter, and have a conversation with him right now, right? And look at the cultures. If it's the American, the Indian, the African, the European, whatever it is, which cultures do you see coming in and doing? Which cultures? And you would find out, I will speak from my standpoint. I'll speak from my standpoint. I wouldn't speak from anybody's. I came from Liberia during the war, after the war, and I knew what I didn't have in Liberia. I didn't have, so perspectives, right? I didn't have the school bus to pick me up. It was my parents' bus. My dad had a Volkswagen. Oh, props to the Volkswagen bus. 3 rows, my boys who were going to school, Mr. Port's coming, and they were running to their, to come and get at least a car to take them and not go and fight with grown-ups who are going to work at the same time on the public transportation, because you would get dirty and hits and do all kinds of stuff before you get to school. So the hustle was real, but luckily Dad had a car. It was private school, good, excellent education. When I got here, I knew that universities back home were non-existent, right? Because of the infrastructure, the dilapidation of the infrastructure, when I got here, I'm looking at the way certain students were in class. I mean, they sat in class with their feet up, leaning on the chair arm, and the professor's talking and they were doing, and I'm like, oh my goodness, wow. The professor is God in this particular setting, right? I'm like, oh my goodness. I go, so there we go. We got the empirical data. And I wanted to say that, but I didn't want to say it. Walter goes, with the cultures I have personally dealt with, first, I would say Asian will be the most disciplined, followed second by Ukrainian. So, and it's always,
I would say Indian as well.
Indian also. I was going to say Indian, and I will put Africans in there. Because when we do come in here, because I'm speaking from my standpoint, we know where we've come from and we have the conversation. We had the conversation. I'm going to turn it over to you shortly. That when the bus stop changes from 900 to 9:05 on whatever street they're on, because they cannot walk, because they walk 2 steps prior and now it's 10, 20 steps. There's a whole conference on why it changed from 900 to 905. Why did you change the bus? Why did you change the bus stop? How about if the bus stops coming, what are you going to do now? How are you going to change? How are you going to adapt to it? So it's these cultures, you know, when what we're talking about in perseverance versus, you know, putting it in their laps, I'm saying to myself, if I had a government who gave me financial aid, and I don't like the financial aid thing, right? Because you come out, there's a whole lot of debt you have. But if I had a government that would give me free schooling, public schooling at the level, at certain levels within this particular country, oh my goodness, that's heaven.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
heaven,
and
Tracy.
it is. And there are cultures that have that. I mean, when I was studying in Switzerland, so I went
There
to
you go.
university in Switzerland, and, you know, that was really a great set point too, where I got to see more cultures, right? So there are certain cultures that tend to come and live in the United States. I mean, it's not to say we aren't all representative of all cultures, but we just see larger populations of certain people in the
Correct.
States. Up until the point, you know, I knew you, I have met a handful of African people, you know, and always at high levels, you know, like educationally speaking. But I met most of my African friends came from my time in Switzerland, actually. And I was, you know, it was interesting. I thankfully I didn't think it through ahead of time, because I might have backed out. No, I don't think I would have, but I chose to take all my third year undergraduate courses in French, right? So we had a choice as American students.
There you go.
We could be in another country and take classwork in English, or we could be in another country and take it in the language we had been learning, the secondary language we had been learning. I'm like, well, what's the point in going to another country and doing it in English? There's no challenge there. I'm not going to learn anything differently. I mean, I'll learn from living in the culture, but language wise, no, I want to challenge myself. So I find myself, I hadn't thought about what my requirements that year were. So my requirements I went to a Jesuit school. So I had my religious requirements and theology requirements that year. So here I am in these lecture, you know, classrooms, mostly with African students, actually, a very large population of African students who all speak French fluently. I mean, I had been studying since I was in 5th grade, so I knew it pretty well, but I wasn't fluent, and I was studying theology and religion, among other things. I took all my coursework in French, except for my German class, which I took in German, but it was a complete, I mean, I literally thought my GPA was going to be in the toilet after that. But what I did learn, same as you, is how to, you know, lean into my relationships with other students, how to be supported, how not to be that island, right? Because, you know, as always, as an American, you know, student, it was always my work is my job and me alone, and I am the island, right? I will produce my work. And that collaborative you were talking about, being collaborative. Oh yeah, all of that. That's the one thing I noticed. I'm like, everybody's in study groups, everybody's studying together. Correct. And when I finally got into that, I'm like, why would you not do it this way? This is like, makes so much more sense. But I also feel that challenge piece, the fact that I challenged myself, the fact, you know, at the end, I remember one of the university professors saying to me, because I was one of the few that did that. Most of the Americans took all their coursework in English. And he came up and said to me, he said, you have done very well for yourself, young lady. And he said, and I don't just mean in your grades. I have watched you, and I'm very impressed with your ability as an American, because we'd get thrown that all the time as an American. Like they don't expect much from us as Americans in other places. If for those of you who don't know, you know, as an American, you know, you have really shown, you know, your capacity. And I remember that being a very pivotal moment for me, because I was getting recognition for something I was proud of myself for, but also, you know, in recognizing that, we don't push ourselves much.
Mm,
We, again, I'm talking from a cultural,
gotcha.
social standpoint. And when our society also starts to lean into this idea of security and comfort, and I'm not saying from the point of view of like, so don't take my words and twist them, anybody, please,
Correct.
that we're supposed to not look at, making safe work environments and that type of thing. That's not what I'm
True.
saying. What I'm saying is as a general
Mm-hmm.
idea,
Mm-hmm.
when we're seeking security all the time, I won't do that because it's not secure.
Mm-hmm.
You need to make that secure for me before I'll try that. Or, unless I can go with all my buddies, I'm not,
Yeah.
going to try to push my capacity on that.
Yeah.
Then we truncate our own ability to know what
Mm,
we're capable of. And
mm,
that's where confidence wanes. So when people tell me they lack confidence, the first thought that goes off in my mind is you lack experience.
experience.
You lack experience in knowing your capacity. Your
Mm-hmm.
capacity is wider and larger than any space that you could be in, but you lack the awareness of what that is.
Yeah.
Right. So where can we test that? Right. And it's not going to be comfortable and it won't necessarily be secure. Now, we're not going to be doing dangerous stuff,
Right.
but at the same time, you have to test and challenge, right, those walls of comfort zone in order to test capacity. Capacity
Yes.
cannot be tested in a comfort zone. It just can't.
Mm, yeah, and I want to put a disclaimer to this. When it's not every American that's
No,
sitting back. Mm-mm.
no, not at
The
all.
country is huge. So there are those of you who are on here who are who are
You
not
agree with us.
comfortable. Yeah, who agree that you are not, I'm an American now. Hey, right? Walter, the Roy, etc., Barbara, you're making moves in your industry, in wherever you are, your purpose-driven lives. You're making moves. We're not saying that, the general, it's not a blanket statement, right? It's just what's happening with the level, and even at the level with the 5s and the 30s, there are people in there who are moving forward, who are pushing, who
Oh,
are
amazing.
Americans, yeah, who are
Yeah.
doing excellent things. But it's just, I think that the culture, the general sense of what the perception of it is, we have arrived, we are there. The Sultan, I think in Dubai, I don't know what his name was. He said, my grandfather rode a camel, or my great grandfather rode a camel. My dad rode something else. I'm riding a Rolls Royce. My son will ride a Rolls Royce. My grandson will ride what his grandfather then, and his great grandson will ride a camel, because the great grandson doesn't know what great granddad did, because it's sitting right in his lap going, I got it. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to eat this. I'm going to ride this. I'm going to do, but he doesn't know the work ethic on how did this thing come here, unless that tells the next, where we call the oral history. You go and you tell the reason why we're here is because my dad did X and I'm doing X, and this is what you're supposed to do. Passing it along, the work ethic, how to do it, how to sustain it. That is so important. And in our lives with our kids, right? It's me talking to my son, you're first generation American. I came to this country as an immigrant with 25, 30 bucks in my pocket, an I-20 form, tuition paid, and hustled, had the chance. The option came where I was supposed to leave school because I didn't have money, but I went to the provost, I went to the financial guy and wrote a couple letters saying, hey, I'm an immigrant here. And when I found my grade, I sent that, I posted that my picture of my transcript on that story. When I went looking in there to find it, I saw those letters that I wrote to the various guys saying, hey, I'm dire straits. It's coming from the war. Looking back, coming from the war, the challenge that God allowed me to live during the war, when I came to school with that challenge of, you have to leave the school. I'm like, heck no, I'm not leaving. What are the options here?
That's
Because
it.
there is an
Not
option,
giving up.
not
Yeah.
giving up. So
Not giving up. Yeah.
you have to look at, what are the options, even in your depression? What are the options in this place where I'm on my knees, I'm at rock bottom? What are the options? Standing up. So you have to ask those questions to yourself, because I think we did the questions, asking yourself, being introspective. You have to ask yourself, what are the options in this case,
Yeah.
in order for me to get out of where I am? Back over to you, sis.
I think I was actually just posting something today as a response to a tag that I got on LinkedIn, on someone else's post. And, and it was about mental health, and, I was talking about the narratives we tell, right? It is so important, we're putting more focus on mental health and the importance of mental health. But I said, mental health is not its own part of who we are. Mental health is comprised of our physical health, our emotional health, our spiritual health, right? And that all affects our mental health. And so, it isn't just mental health. What are the capacity, or what, and what is playing on those things? What is depressing them, or what is challenging them, and because I said, there is a solution for everything. And if your narrative says anything other than that, and it's a challenge to believe that there is a solution for every, I don't care what it is, there's a solution. Then start at least with an I don't know mind. Start neutral, right? If you can't say, I know there's a solution, if it's too challenging, start with neutrality. I don't know what the solution is, but I am going to work to discover it. Right? I don't know what it is, but I'm going to work to discover, right, it, or if there is one, or it's keeping open, right? As long as we have, when somebody's trying to give you something like change, for example, and you're like this, can you take the change?
Nope.
You can't take the change. The change is going to bounce off your fist. You have to have an open palm to receive the change, right? So in order to receive that change and shift in narrative, we have to be open. So whatever that is that we can start at, that start place, that just do it spot, where we can be open to a new narrative, right? Because some of us were just made this way. Some of us were just, oh, really? You're telling me I can't do it?
Yep.
I show you. I came out of the womb like that, apparently,
Yep.
And it served me well.
Yes.
But not everybody is like that. Not everybody's temperamentally like that, and not everybody is conditioned to be like that. In fact, you can come out like that and end up being conditioned the opposite direction. But we can start with neutral, right? We can start with considering that it is the narrative. It is, if we're telling ourselves there's a solution for everything, guess what? Where our focus goes is where our action flows, right? So when I'm focused on a solution, my mind, my body, everything's going to be geared towards believing that there's a solution, right? And I'm going to find it.
Yeah.
Right. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So let's go to comments. We got Roy. You are an expert until you have, you are not an expert until you have, you are an expert until you have successful experience.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. You can have the credentials. Like I could be a brand new teacher who has the credentials, who's never taught in a classroom.
Albert goes, thanks for sharing. I also hear my overall response to a challenge not only impacts me in the moment, but also offers the experiences that I can look back on to build endurance and stamina to continue to move forward through future challenges.
That is
Walter
great.
goes, so Walter, I spoke about Walter's input on the cultures he's seen, the Asians and the Ukrainians. Roy goes, work ethic makes a significant difference. Achievement is so much easier. And Walter said he had a scoot to go to his course, to do a course at Campbell. Take care, man. But I tell you, I'm going to say my piece and then I'm going to let you close this, Traci. today was looking back, right? I think that's what it was.
Looking
Looking
back to
back
move forward.
to
Yeah.
move forward. Yes. And exactly what I was about to say, but not in those words. But it's so important to take a look back, see where you are, and create that plan to move forward. Because without understanding the experiences you've had, even if they have been pleasant ones, um, understanding what those were, what did you learn from them? How can you move forward with them? I think one of the main things I do is try to mentor, because it's a legacy thing. It's anybody who I meet who has and that's what drives me, who has the, head bowed down. I don't know what I'm going to do. And it's perspective, 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 perspective. You're in a country that you have options, man. You have options. So you can't tell me, black, white, Cuban, or Asian, you can't tell me that everything is woe is me. I can't do it anymore. You can't tell me. You know why you can't tell me? Because when I didn't have polish to polish my shoes to get on the plane, you know what I did, Tracy?
You spit on them.
No. I took some Vaseline, dear. I wiped the shoes down and I put some Vaseline on it. You would never tell me my shoes weren't shined, right? There are things you have to do. Nobody knows, but options exist.
That's right. Oh, I love that. Well, I'm thinking of two things to close this out. And they're both other people, Vinay Raman, who has been, on here a number of times.
Mhm.
He posted something about that very thing, perspective, today on LinkedIn, so I think it's in the air. We're picking up the vibes of where we're all kind of collectively thinking.
Yes.
And then also, I think what you just described speaks to my very first conversation with a client today, where he said, the beginning of COVID was a great experience for him as far as his business, because it just shot through the roof. And now he's starting to experience a downturn. And he said, what comes up always comes down. But he says, I'm not even looking at that from just the linear perspective. He said, I recognize with gratitude that what I was this is a step back. This is a perspective step back time. It's a grace period, right? Because during that upswing, I'm growing. And as I'm growing, things are changing. And as they're changing, I need to shift my business operations plans, approaches, all of that to keep up with the growth. But because I'm so busy growing, I don't have time to do that. So I have to kind of stop for a bit to be able to sustain what I have grown, to be able to get on top of the operations and the systems and all of that, so that I can support that growth, right? So it's not really a, like fall. It's really a grace period, right? To get your ducks in a row and and he said, and for that, I'm incredibly grateful. I look back on, I am still much further beyond where I was 2 years ago, right? So even with this grace period of slowdown, I'm still much beyond what I was doing before. And so I'm not falling backwards. I'm actually taking a step backwards to get perspective and to be able to take what I have learned and done and grown and work on making sure I stabilize that. And I think that that's the piece we can always look at when there's, because we think we just want to grow. But that is not sustainable. It's like a balloon. If it would pop. Right. And our lives are like that. We're not, and no part of our human form is made to just expand. There's expansion and contraction, right? Think about how the heart moves and the lungs and expansion, contraction, right?
Muscle.
So muscles, everything, and so it is, as we look at the patterns in life. So it's the story we give it. We would never give the story of, oh my God, all of the air is going out of my lungs, in a bad way. I mean, it's necessary in order to take that next breath. Right. And so that's the way I'm leaving kind of as a consideration. Think about those contraction periods. right? Where you can have gratitude and learn from what you have. I mean, you can actually build a lot of your own capacity for confidence during the contraction periods.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes both expansion and contraction to actually have that, to have the experience that then leads to the confidence that we all seek.
Traci Phillips, thank you.
Wulwyn Port, you're welcome, and thank you.
Barbara goes, you can have what you work for. Roy, change is continual.
I like
everything.
that.
Everything comes in waves.
All so
Can we
salient
do this?
points.
Can we do this every day? No.
I know. Can you imagine what kind of people we would be if we had the value of everybody else's,
Yes,
experience as well? Yeah.
Wow. Traci, see you in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Praying all is well with you. And
Likewise.
to all of you, really, if my conversations with Traci, our conversations, if they are as written in this book, go out and get it. I tell you, because I've seen a couple of topics. Let me just go through a couple of topics for you. I know it's over 2:00, but hey, we run this thing. Setting the stage, waking up, soul role, the conditioned identity, living a leased life, building awareness, seeking engagement, accepting ownership, leadership development. I mean, come on now. Come on, get off this thing and go buy a book. Take care, y'all. Love y'all.
Thank you. Thank you all. See you in 2 weeks.
See you, Traci.
Bye, Wulwyn.